Financial Survival Network, helping you to survive and thrive in the new economy. Get our complimentary newsletter at financialsurvivalnetwork.com. This is the Financial Survival Network.
You are listening to the financialsurvivalnetwork.com. I'm Kerry Lutz on 1230 WBZT. Well, uncertain times, what's in the stars, what's going on in the heavens. Only one person to talk to, and that's Arch Crawford of Crawford Perspectives. I haven't talked to him in a while. Arch, welcome back to the Financial Survival Network.
Well, thank you very much. We are in the time period where the worst declines have occurred seasonally in September and October. October has had the most bottoms. I think I once took all of the biggest down days in the S&P from 1928 and put them around the calendar dates, and 2/3 of the worst down days were in 1/3 of the months of the calendar, and it was centered on the fall equinox, which this year is September 22nd. It's usually the 21st or 22nd. So September 22nd is the middle of the period of the worst down days in history, the exact middle of the period. And from now, we have another couple of hits of the Uranus-Pluto square. The next one is on November the 1st, but on the more immediate picture in late September and early October, we had September the 19th was the full moon on the 19th. The Pluto went direct on the 20th, and the 21st was the last positive aspect between Saturn and Pluto. And after that, we said after this, things could get bluey. The September 22nd, W.D. Gann said to watch the equinox dates for possible turns. We say it's more likely to turn if the volatility is high going in. The 27th to 30th. The 30th is the last day of the U.S. fiscal year, and there is a Jupiter-Neptune aspect which we feel could drive the metals sharply higher into that period of 27th to 30th of September. That could be a short-term top. October 1st to 7th, it says there will be massive activations of the Uranus-Pluto continuing saga. This goes on for like 3.5 years with Uranus-Pluto squares. And every time they're activated by the Sun or Mars or Saturn or something like that, it upsets markets as well as other things. And the next exact of the Uranus-Pluto square is November 1st. So we're saying that October 1st, the 1st to the 7th, and there is Mars activates the Uranus-Pluto square, and I think Venus does too. Or there are a couple of planets that hit and activate that Uranus-Pluto square, which has been associated with major depressions and major wars. So I don't think we're going to get out of this with a whole skin. The biggest thing I see coming up, one of the big things is October 18th, where we have a full moon eclipse. And that's could be very damaging, very emotional time. November the 1st is a solar eclipse, and November the 3rd is the next exact Uranus-Pluto square, or vice versa. I forget, one is the 1st and one is the 3rd. The 3rd is the solar eclipse, and the 1st is the Uranus-Pluto square exact. So we get a lot of things heat up dramatically now for a little while, and then in October, again, much more so. The first week of October, then the 18th, and then at the end of the month. The biggest thing we see coming up is later, in November the 23rd, we have one and only Uranus-Pluto square in the heliocentric, looking out from the sun. And that occurs at the same time Jupiter is square one and opposite the other. And to the only 3 minutes of arc separation, which is 1/20th of 1 degree. And I expect that time to unleash solar flares onto the Earth. The biggest one we've ever experienced in written history in the U.S. has been, well, since those things have been followed, was 1859, and the telegraph system went down, but it was actually continuing to chatter on its own from just the electricity from the sun. And some places were set on fire by the telegraph machines, which were unplugged.
Yeah, so
I think it's going to be worse than that. Of course, in modern times, we had a solar flare that busted about a quarter of Canada was down, and they were down for more than a couple of days. I don't remember exactly how long, but it covered a wide area. And the next one that was just a minor inconvenience in the U.S., where a satellite was taken out, and it happened to be the satellite where you charge gasoline at gas stations. So there were 2 or 3 days that you could not charge gas at a gas station until they maneuvered another satellite over to take that one's place to the same position.
amazing. So these solar flares can be quite destructive.
Well, this will be, in my opinion, the biggest in all of history that we know of.
And the effects really could lead to widespread outages, although we haven't encountered that yet.
Well, I just hope it doesn't fry our system and throw us back 150 years.
Yeah, well, supposedly many of the government's military systems or intelligence systems have been hardened to prevent against this and other phased or, electropulse weapons. But the rest of us are kind of left out in the breeze.
Right, hanging in the breeze.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Well, that's the biggest thing I see in the future. Now, the odd thing is that Ed Dames is one of the remote viewers, and he has been hyping the idea that the remote viewers have seen a big destructive hit from the sun, but they're not sure when it will be.
Years ago they saw it. Yeah.
They're not good on timing. But I would say if this is going to happen, it's going to be on November 23rd.
Mm-hmm. And
plus or minus a few days.
Yeah, they had a name for it. I can't remember the name of it.
The kill shot.
Yeah, kill shot.
That's what Ed Dames is doing. Although one of the people who was involved in making the study was Courtney Brown, and he is downplaying that aspect of it.
Yeah, it's always been a threat there, electronic equipment. And, another thing that's going on is, even though they say there's climate change and all that, the fact is it's actually getting colder because there's less sunspot activity. The sunspot cycle peaked, I guess it was last year or the year before. Now we're going...
Actually, it was in May.
Yeah, and we're going into a down cycle.
It peaked way lower than they were expecting and way lower than normal. So I have been saying that for years, that the heat was coming from the planetary mass as it affected the sun, causing the heat over the last 4 or 5 years, and that as of 2010 or 11, I said we would turn and go back to the cold. And so far, the measured by satellite, the Earth's temperature has been pretty much unchanged, slightly cooler, or only up a very small fraction of 1 degree in the last decade. So
Yeah.
I think we're going back into cold. And if we hadn't, the last time we had no sunspots for an extended period, we had freezes and people were eating each other in Great Britain.
Yeah, and Greenland turned from an arable island into basically ice-covered island.
Right.
So all these things are going on, all the troubles of the world, and we're worried about what's happening in the stock market and the price of gold, right?
Well, right. Well, these are immediately positive and negative for us, and we are interested in those things. But the problematic pictures in the sky suggest that by the time all of this is over, we won't care or we won't have these things. So,
Well, that's encouraging.
Actually, I quoted Martin Armstrong in my last letter, and he was saying that my definition of hyperinflation is one where the currency does not survive regardless of the rate of inflation. In a hyperinflation, all tangible assets retain value, such as gold, shares, and property. In deflation, the government sucks in everything, raising taxes, etc., so that people simply migrated out of Rome, walking away from property. That is when movable versus immovable assets are distinguished. The further you go down this path, the more basic money becomes. You can pass the point where shares and property fail, then gold fails, and finally we arrive only at food. These are the stages of deflation to the point you enter a dark age. Unfortunately, what we face is far worse than this, and it's why I say to you, I say you will pray for hyperinflation before they are done with this. Socialism is collapsing. The bail-in and the NSA proves that. It is and we get to the Mad Max situation he mentions.
You think it's going to get that bad?
He mentions that it might get that bad.
Yeah, well, it's, we're always one generation away from barbarism or something like that. That's been said.
Right.
I don't
Well, if
remember.
we lose the electrical grid, that could throw us back a long way.
Yeah, because there goes your iPhone and your iPad. That's for sure.
And if it's severe enough, it may interfere with crops, and that's what we worry about the next few years. As the sunspot cycle reaches the next low, and the spots go to very low, then we may not have a long enough growing season to keep 8 billion people alive.
Yeah, it would only be in the very southern regions. And we're going to talk more about this on the Financial Survival Network. I'm Kerry Lutz on 1230 WBZT. I know we've got a lot of you out there who are coffee fiends just like me. You couldn't go one day without your Java. But here's my question. Why do you drink so much marginal coffee? That watery stuff you get in some places? There's another life, friends, where coffee is good, right, and true. Our friends at Tonks buy your beans directly from the growers, roast it to absolute perfection, and ship it to you within 24 hours. It's a bi-weekly subscription which sends the best beans on earth directly to your doorstep for the price of just a few cafe visits. They'd love to send you a free sample so you can see what you've been missing out on. Use the URL tonks.org/liberty. That's tonx.org/liberty. They'll send you a free sample, and I'll tell you, once you've tasted their coffee, there's no going back. And we're back with Arch Crawford on the FinancialSurvivalNetwork.com. I'm Kerry Lutz on 1230 WBZT. So you really think that this could affect the growing cycle? Well, certainly if the sunspot cycle is disrupted and we go to the point where they're severely diminished or disappear altogether, that's going to be huge. I mean, that will do more for depopulation than anything the Ford Foundation or the Carnegie Endowment or any of them have tried to do for the past 100 years, won't it?
I believe it will, yes. Of course, we have. I try to remind people that we have lived during the best times ever on the planet in the westernized countries. We've lived like much better than kings lived in former ages, and have had 3 meals a day and warm in the winter and cool in the summer. I mean, this is a very rare period of time in all of history that we know about.
Yeah, that's why I tell people go to preparewise.com, buy your food, because you never know what's going to happen. I mean, I'm in Florida here. We could have a hurricane tomorrow. In the Northeast, this was right around the time last year that we had Hurricane Sandy. It shut down the Northeast for weeks.
Well, oddly, we've had fewer hurricanes the last 2 or 3 seasons since that big one that a bunch of them hit Florida at one time or one right after the other. But there's been quite a bit fewer, although the one was bigger.
Yeah, exactly. We had 2 that hit New York or hit further north in the past 2 years. Sandy last year and the one before that the year before. And we had a snowstorm in New York on Halloween the year before last. So, you got to have food. You got to be prepared for these disruptions because they can come about at any time. Go to preparewise.com, use the discount code Lutz or Liberty, and be prepared. It just makes total sense.
Out here, we need to conserve water as well, so we've got a few bottles hanging around. And if you know it's going out soon, you can fill up your bathtub.
Yeah, I got a swimming pool full of water, so I guess I should have a water filter and bottles of chlorine, right?
Right. I have a pump which is used by the military, hand carried, which will purify 13,500 gallons.
Yeah, I probably got about, I think probably has 35,000 gallons. And, it's not what I'd really prefer to drink, but when push comes to shove, swimming pool water could be looking pretty good, right?
Well, it's a lot better than drinking your own piss, but your own piss is drinkable as it comes out. It is quite pure.
Yeah.
And you can use that in emergency situations.
Yeah. Word to the wise. So, but preparewise.com/Lutz, use the code, free shipping, and depending on the size of your order, you get a substantial discount. And I've got, I think I'm up to about 6 months worth. It just kind of, once you start prepping, it kind of becomes addictive. But everybody should have at least a couple of weeks, don't you think?
Well, even FEMA says you should keep a couple of weeks in case you get the net going down or in an area like Sandy where people didn't have electricity for some of them for several weeks. So you should have you take these preparations, and if you don't need them, thank God.
Yeah, they're good for 25 years, and the stuff has no GMOs in it, no chemicals. It's all organic, and you're just crazy not to do it. Like 180 meals is like $250, and you can't even go to McDonald's that cheap.
That's right.
For sure. So financial markets, everything's looking pretty volatile now. And I'd imagine even if we don't get these solar flares, the volatility is only going to be increasing in the coming weeks and months ahead.
I definitely agree with that. We seem to be making a bit of a top today. I shorted on the full moon, which was the 19th, and I have solid profits on S&P and Dow Jones. And the actually it's the S&P that I think I still have in the newsletter. And I said to short the Dow if it goes back below 15,162. No, that's the stop. I said short if it gets down to 14,440 and place a stop. 5% stop would be 15,162. So we're keeping an eye on it all. And my website is crawfordperspectives.com.
All right.
Or just Google Arch Crawford. It's easier. Spelling that out. It's 31 letters, I think.
Yeah, makes sense, and really can't go wrong doing it. And Arch, so it's crawfordperspectives.com and financialsurvivalnetwork.com. Just go there. We've got lots of interviews with Arch. Arch, thanks as always. We'll talk with you again soon. You be well.
Blessings.
You too.
Hi, it's Kerry Lutz. I recently decided to move my retirement account into physical precious metals to hedge against the coming times. If you want to move an existing retirement account into physical precious metals that you can hold in your hand, tax-free, there's no company that can do it more quickly and efficiently than Regal Assets. It took them just 24 hours to open my new IRA account, and all I had to do was fill out one simple form. The best part is that Regal Assets does all the work for you. They cover the setup and administrative costs for 2013. If you're interested in making the same move I did, call 855-678-6620, 855-678-6620. That's 855-678-6620, or visit them at regalassets.com. You'll be glad you did, and tell them Kerry sent you.
The Financial Survival Network, helping you to survive and thrive in the new economy. Get our complimentary newsletter at financialsurvivalnetwork.com. This is the Financial Survival Network.